There's a book that has been read continuously for 600 years, not studied in classrooms, not assigned for credit, read voluntarily by monks and soldiers, by queens and prisoners, by people in the middle of the night who could not sleep and did not know why. Thomas à Kempis, a quiet monk born in 1380 in what is now Germany, wrote it in a monastery where he spent 70 years copying manuscripts by hand. It has never gone out of print. After the Bible, historians call it the most widely read book in the world, and almost nobody under 40 has heard of it. Tonight you will have. This is a summary of The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. This book was written for people who had everything religion could offer on the outside: the rituals, the titles, the correct opinions, and still felt hollow. It was written for them. It may have been written for you. If you want a summary like this every week, subscribing takes one tap. Let's name what this book is actually about, because the title misleads people. It is not about copying the miracles of Christ. It is about something smaller and harder, choosing to care less about how you appear to the world and more about what you are becoming on the inside. Thomas writes that a man can know the entire Bible by memory and still be useless to himself and to God, because knowledge puffed up is not the same as a life well lived. He says, plainly, "What will it profit you to discuss the nature of the Trinity with great sophistication if you lack humility and therefore displease God?" The goal is not to know more. The goal is to become quieter, cleaner, and more honest inside. That is the ache this book addresses. The feeling that you have learned a great deal and grown very little. That you are busy with important things and somehow still not at peace. That you are moving forward and standing still at the same time. The book moves through 4 phases: learning to see yourself honestly, building an inner life, listening when God speaks to you inwardly, and approaching the practice of communion. The first 3 phases carry the weight of the book's wisdom, and that is where we will go deepest. First, the noise you cannot stop thinking through. Thomas opens with a single line that lands like cold water. What does it profit you to enter into deep discussion about the Holy Trinity if you lack humility and so displease the Trinity? He is not anti-intellectual. He is saying something more uncomfortable, that the desire to appear learned can become a way of hiding from the actual work of changing. Most of us know this feeling. You read more books. You take more courses. You have better opinions than you did 3 years ago. You are also, in many ways, exactly the same person you were 3 years ago. The habits you meant to break are still there. The anger is still there. The impatience is still there. The way you treat the people closest to you on a bad day, that is still there. Thomas says the ancient teachers understood this, and they chose a different path. They turned away from the noise of endless inquiry and turned inward. They asked not, "What do I believe?" but "What am I doing?" And every morning, they started again. The practical move here is one Thomas repeats throughout the whole book. Pick one thing to work on. He writes that if we uprooted one vice each year, we would soon become quite different people. One vice per year. It sounds too slow. It is actually a faster system than anything else, because small and consistent beats large and abandoned every time. Most people try to change everything at once, fail at everything at once, and conclude that they cannot change. Thomas says the fault is not in you. The fault is in the size of the target. Second, what you actually want at 3 in the morning. There is a chapter in Book 1 about death that I want to spend some time with, because it is the chapter most people skip, and the one that changes the most. Thomas writes, "Very soon your life here will end, not someday. Very soon." He suggests a practice. In the morning, consider that you may not live until evening. In the evening, do not promise yourself the dawn. He is not trying to frighten you. He is trying to do the opposite of that. Free you from the small anxieties by putting them next to the large one. When you hold your death clearly in your mind, the question, should I say the honest thing or the comfortable thing, becomes easier to answer. The question, should I waste this afternoon being angry at someone who was rude to me, becomes easier to answer. Not because you don't care, because you see, for a moment, exactly how much time you have, and exactly what it is worth. Thomas tells of a man who knelt before an altar, torn between hope and fear about his soul, and heard inside himself the quiet question, if you knew you would be saved, what would you do? Then do that now. The man stood up. The anxiety left, not because the uncertainty was gone, because the right action was already clear and had been clear all along. The question is not whether you will die. The question is whether you will let that fact change how you spend today. Third, the problem with feeling good. Here is the turn in the book that surprises most readers. Thomas is deeply suspicious of spiritual consolation, the warm feeling, the sense of closeness to God, the moments of peace and clarity. His suspicion is not that these feelings are fake. It is that people start to pursue the feeling rather than the thing behind the feeling. And when the feeling goes away, they conclude that God has left them, that they are failures, that something is broken. He writes about the experience of what he calls dryness, the long stretches when prayer feels like talking to a wall, when the warmth is gone, when you go through the motions and feel nothing. And he says, this is where the real work happens. Anyone can be devout when devotion feels good. The test of what you actually believe is whether you keep going when it does not feel like anything at all. This is not abstract spiritual theory. You know this experience personally. You started something with great energy, a habit, a relationship, a project, a faith practice. The energy carried you for weeks or months. Then the energy left, and without the energy you stopped, because you had been following the feeling, not the commitment. Thomas says the seasons will change, the warmth will return, but only if you do not abandon the practice during winter. His advice is precise. When the consolation is absent, do not seek it in other places. Do not become lazy or depressed. Do not drop your ordinary duties. Stay in place. Do your work quietly. Wait. The people who become genuinely different, not just temporarily inspired, but actually different in who they are the ones who learn to work without applause, from the world and from themselves. Fourth, the trouble with other people. Thomas has a surprisingly modern diagnosis of something that makes most people miserable: caring too much about how other people see you. He is not saying to stop caring entirely. He is saying something more specific. He writes that a man has no rest until he stops meddling in the affairs of others, stops needing their approval, and stops requiring that they behave the way he wants them to. He says the people who found true peace were not the ones who had the easiest circumstances. They were the ones who stopped using other people's behavior as the measurement of their own well-being. There is a passage on humility that is worth sitting with. He writes, "Do not think yourself better than others, lest perhaps you be accounted worse before God who knows what is in man." The logic is simple. You see everyone else's visible sins and mistakes. You do not see their private virtues, their private suffering, their private struggles. You see your own private virtues and private struggles very clearly. This makes comparison useless and usually unjust in both directions. The practical application. Stop keeping score. Stop collecting evidence for why you are right and they are wrong. Thomas says, this is not weakness. It is the only way to actually be at peace with people, including yourself. Fifth, the life that fits inside one room. The center of Book 2 is a passage about what Thomas calls the interior life. He writes that when Jesus is close, everything seems possible and nothing seems heavy. When that closeness is absent, everything is hard, every comfort is empty, and no amount of external arrangement will fix it. He describes a scale. On one side, all the things people pursue to feel better: position, recognition, friendships, entertainment, comfort, the company of clever people. On the other side, a single hour of genuine quiet in which you are honest with yourself and open to God. He is not saying the external things are evil. He is saying they are not heavy enough to balance what you actually need. Lawrence of Rome, the 3rd century deacon and martyr, appears in these pages as an example. He watched his beloved friend and superior, the Pope Sixtus, led away to execution, and he did not fall apart. He had already placed his love somewhere that could not be taken. Thomas uses this image to make a point that is both very old and very urgent. The only love that does not eventually disappoint you is the love that is not conditioned on the person staying, the feeling remaining, the situation holding. You know what it feels like to build your peace on something that was then removed. The job, the relationship, the health, the version of yourself you thought was permanent. You know the specific quality of that grief. Thomas says the answer is not to love less. It is to love more precisely, to place your deepest weight on something that holds. The book ends not with instruction, but with an invitation. Thomas describes the soul approaching communion, the act of fully receiving what is given, without deflection, without pride, without the need to understand it completely first. He writes that a man who scrutinizes the sacrament, rather than receiving it, is like a doctor who studies illness and refuses to take the medicine. At some point, you have to stop analyzing and start opening. 600 years of readers have come back to this book in the same moments, when they were exhausted by the version of themselves they had been maintaining, when they could not sleep, when the noise of their own clever thoughts had finally worn them out. Thomas does not promise that your life will become easier. He promises that you will become quieter, and from that quiet, he says, everything else follows. The man who knelt at the altar and did not know if he would make it, he stood up. He did what was already clear to do. He stopped trying to know the future and started living the present. That is still the instruction. It has not changed in 600 years. Tonight is a fine time to start. If something in this summary stayed with you, drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know which part landed, and a like helps more than you know.